Good evening, everyone. This is Stone Gas Man live from New York City, and tonight we are going to be doing an audio commentary for the 1981 movie Chariots of Fire, directed by Hugh Hudson and written by Colin Weiland, with music by Vangelis and produced by David Puttnam and distributed by Warner Brothers and the Ladd Company. And this is indeed the movie that won Best Picture of 1981. We'll talk a lot about that. We're going to talk a lot about the Oscar race that is centered around this film. However, I'm doing this film all for very specific purpose because earlier this year, Alan Ladd Jr., one of the most legendary producers who was the head of the Ladd Company, he was at 20th Century Fox when he gave the green light to George Lucas to do Star Wars. He passed away earlier this year. And his production company, the Ladd Company, released 26 films, most of them in the early 1980s, although there were a few in the mid-1990s and also a couple in the 2000s. But most of the films that came out through the Ladd Company came out in the early 1980s. Chariots of Fire was the very first one. A collaboration between Warner Brothers and the Ladd Company as distribution. And they came to this movie and they rescued this movie when nobody really believed in it. Nobody was picking it up. Everybody was ignoring the filmmakers behind this movie. It's actually quite an extraordinary story. And I'm actually very, very excited to talk to you all about Chariots of Fire tonight, because I think it does deserve attention in 2022 just as much as it did in 1981. So I'd like to welcome you all to the commentary tonight. I am currently paused at the first title, which is a Warner Brothers and Ladd Company logo. It is past the Warner Brothers logo if you're watching this on Amazon Prime or YouTube, and yes, it is a $3 rental on Amazon Prime or YouTube. Play through the Warner Brothers logo and pause at Warner Brothers and Ladd Company release, because I think it's important to know who the Ladd Company is. And like I said, I'm going to be doing 24 of the 26 films that they distributed all throughout their when they were in existence. I'm going to be doing 24 of the 26 films that they've done. So it's going to be a journey, and I'm glad I'm starting with Chariots of Fire because, like I said, it's a film I've been very keen on returning to ever since I first saw it in high school. But at any rate, before we press play and get started, I want to let everybody know that's listening that tomorrow I will be doing an audio commentary on this British film called A Day in the Death of Joe Egg, directed by Peter Medak and screenplay by Peter Nichols, based on his play, starring Alan Bates and Janet Suzman. This is a very, it's not very rare, but it's almost out of print. It's a Blu-ray from Indicator Powerhouse, and it does include bonus features. But this will be tomorrow night at 9 p.m. And then next week, we shall be doing an audio commentary for Alfred Hitchcock's Frenzy. That'll be 9 p.m. next Friday night. And then after that, and I do believe I'm definitely going to do it, but next Saturday night on June 25th, next Saturday night, June 25th, I will be doing Blade Runner. I'm not going to be doing 2049 after that. That would take way too long. But I am going to be doing Blade Runner because that was also released by the Ladd Company after Chariots of Fire in 1982. And I will be doing a 40th anniversary audio commentary for Blade Runner. It's the final cut, not the theatrical cut. And here's another movie I've been looking forward to returning to after so many years. So, yeah, those are some heavy films coming up very soon. I mean, like I said, tomorrow is Joe Egg, and next week will be Frenzy and Blade Runner. And just to say hi real quick to Rob Gasper, who's in the chat. Hello, good evening to you, sir. Glad you can make it out tonight. And I think we will go ahead and get started here. So paused at a Warner Brothers and Lad Company release. We'll go ahead and get started at the count of 3, 2, 1, and play. And yes, this is the 1981 classic Chariots of Fire, an Enigma production. And yes, I do think that Chariots of Fire is a classic. I mean, it was a hit when it came out in 1981, and of course, it won 4 major Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Little bit of controversy there, not a lot of controversy, but it seems like whenever people think of unjust Best Picture races, and look, I don't really give a shit about the Academy Awards anymore, but let me say this. In their defense, in 1981, I think that Chariots of Fire is an absolutely worthy Best Picture winner, and I want to say that right off the bat here. Despite its competition, despite the fact that, and it had really heavy competition. It was up against Spielberg's Raiders of the Lost Ark and Warren Beatty's Reds, among other films. But look, this opening sequence with the runners on the beach, and this was filmed actually at a golf course, believe it or not. And a lot of these extras are not really actors, but rather caddies that they brought in to run with the actors who were supposed to be playing actual runners. I love that little tidbit right there. That a lot of these are just golf caddies. They're being paid like a day's wage to like run on the beach, but. And here is our one of our leads, Ian Charleson, and also Ben Cross, who of course are playing 2 of the most famous runners who ever lived, probably because of this movie, who ran in the 1924 Paris Summer Olympics. And this film was basically made in dedication to these 2 men and their accomplishments at the Olympic Games in 1924. However, I like to think of this movie even more than that, because this was a film that, like I said, very, very small British production, very modest British production that didn't have a lot of support outside of the people that were making it. And it's really weird because this film. It started out, if I get the history correct, because I mean this breathtaking opening sequence, and of course the music by Vangelis, who is about to get his full credit here. Original music composed, arranged, and performed by Vangelis. I will challenge anybody to say his last name. I kind of got a fan in front of me, so I wasn't able to read it as I should. Executive producer David Puttnam will be talking a lot about him because he's become a name that we now know in history as the man that was having an affair with Princess Di, and of course would die in the Paris quote unquote accident. In the Paris tunnel in 1997 when they were staying there. So, but the main thing is that this is a film that is dedicated to these 2 runners. And the writer, Colin Weiland, actually one of his inspirations was actually the letters that one of them had written to his own mother, and they utilized that to frame the story here. Now, it's really funny because when most people think of Chariots of Fire, they think of that opening sequence. And then I could be wrong, but if I was going to talk to a lot of, film geeks and everything, they would probably say, I saw the movie once. I don't remember anything that happened after the opening sequence, though, because the opening sequence is so breathtaking, it automatically plunges you into this specific time and place. as we follow this Christian and this Jew who are going to be running in the 1924 Olympic Games. And this was a very important film for the British industry in particular because, you know, even though it was kind of flag waving, it was also rather anti-establishment. So it was a combination of things, and it was a long shot to win the Academy Award, an absolute long shot. Now, there was a different scene that was supposed to be here that's in the European cuts of the movie because the Ladd Company, and we'll be talking a lot about the Ladd Company throughout this commentary and, of course, in all the other commentaries that we do for the films they distributed. But they insisted on a alternative opening sequence, which we just saw, where they have arrived here at Cambridge. And in the European cuts, you actually see these actors play cricket. And it's actually, for the leads, it does actually have some crucial character development, which this American cut kind of loses in that opening few minutes. It is available on the Blu-ray, I mean, as among other bonus features, which we will also talk about. But you can view that alternate cricket sequence with the commentary with the director Hugh Hudson. And I do agree with him that it works better. But the reason why the Ladd Company felt the need to have a alternate sequence is because they felt most American audiences would not understand cricket. And, you know, Hugh Hudson, of course, you know, thought that was a ridiculous argument. Like, I mean, well, you know, what's wrong with learning a little bit about English culture with how they play cricket? Well, I mean, granted, you can't have a scene explaining how cricket is played. I mean, and, you know, after viewing the scene, I said to myself, you know what? I don't think most American audiences would have even considered that they were playing cricket. Oh, they're just doing something, you know, at the college. I mean, not a big deal. Like they're just playing some game. I mean, you know, it could be a British game. It could be whatever. I don't think it really matters. But that was one of several decisions by the Ladd Company, which you could say has been very questionable. When we get to Once Upon a Time in America, and yes, I will be doing all 4 hours of commentary for Once Upon a Time in America, that's when we're really going to take really going to talk about the Ladd Company and what they're most famous for. But, you know, that's a relatively minor decision to say, well, you know, most Americans don't know what cricket is, so maybe we shouldn't have a scene where they play cricket. Well, you know, what they're playing is incidental to what's being said and the performances as well. Now, here we have British actor Richard Griffiths. A lot of people will probably remember him from Naked Gun 2.5, where he played the paralyzed Dr. Meinheimer, who is supposed to give this very important speech to, like, oil and nuclear power, you know, with the government and everything and all that in the spoof comedy form. And he was pretty good in that. I mean, he essentially played a dual role where they got a look-alike with long hair, and they just put him in the wheelchair and do that. There's that great shot where the wheelchair is going over the moon in a E.T. Reference there, which is really good. But Richard Griffiths was also in a movie which I have to mention now that Lindsay Anderson is on the screen here about to talk. Look, this is the great director Lindsay Anderson. Not very well known in the United States, unfortunately, but in England, he's considered a legend, and he's one of the great anti-establishment directors that was a leading light of the free cinema movement and the British New Wave. In 1968, he had directed a movie called If, which many of you will probably recognize my picture is actually Malcolm McDowell from the movie If in 1968. And that's a very key film in British cinema because it won the Palme d'Or that year. And yes, Lindsay Anderson, the gentleman who was talking, he directed If. And it was written by David Sherman. It was the film debut of Malcolm McDowell. And it was essentially looking at this English boarding school and, elements of homosexuality and authoritarianism and the British class system as seen in this microcosm of the boarding school system. And it's a great film. It's a magnificent film. But it's also Malcolm McDowell, does he or does he not start and plot a revolution in the movie? It's very much a revolution movie, and it wasn't made for a whole lot of money. There are sequences in black and white which weren't really done for artistic reasons, but actually for budget reasons. But that ending of If is still shocking to this very day. It was released by DVD and Blu-ray through Criterion. And Lindsay Anderson and Malcolm McDowell would get together again after Malcolm McDowell exploded with Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. He called up Lindsay Anderson and was like, "We got to do another movie together." And Lindsay Anderson told him, "Malcolm, what the hell's wrong with you? Do you think that scripts just like grow on trees or whatever? Like, if you want to do something with me, go out and write something." He actually challenged Malcolm McDowell that way, which I love. So Malcolm McDowell came back with a story that he wrote called Coffee Man. And when they started talking in discussions, it then morphed into this 3-hour epic anti-capitalist satire, which is actually a very loose adaptation of Voltaire's Candide. And basically it's about the adventures of a coffee salesman as he tries to pimp his brand of coffee all across Europe, England, and he just gets involved with all these bizarre situations. I mean, horrific stuff. I mean, satire galore. It's just amazing, and it's one of the greatest British films that I've ever seen. It's certainly one of my favorites, and but it's also a trilogy. After If and Oh Lucky Man, Lindsay Anderson and Richard Griffiths, who I pointed out before at the registration desk, they both did another film here called Britannia Hospital, which is the third in the Mick Travis trilogy. Now, I'm going to stop there for a minute. I'm going to pause there on Britannia Hospital and mention that this scene right here, one of these extras is Kenneth Branagh. Now, I actually found on IMDb a description of what he's actually wearing. If I could actually find it here, or actually I'm trying to even remember if I wrote it down. Probably just be easier to look it up. But Kenneth Branagh and Stephen Fry is somewhere in that scene. I mean, it ultimately doesn't matter, but I mean, Kenneth Branagh was a gopher during this movie, and so he did. I mean, there is a description of him in the IMDb trivia section. I'm not going to go back and read it right now, but if you really want to search for him, Where's Waldo style, go ahead. But I'm not going to bother doing it. But anyway, here's Lindsay Anderson still on the screen, and here's also the magnificent actor John Gielgud. Well, okay, so Lindsay Anderson made the Mick Travis trilogy. There's If, there's Oh Lucky Man, and then finally there's Britannia Hospital, which is a satire set in a London hospital. And it's just, it has, striking workers, ruthless unions, violent demonstrators, racist aristocrats, and an African cannibal dictator and sinister human experiments financed by the Japanese. Can Mick survive one very strange day in these unhealthy halls, or is the entire British Empire in critical condition? Yeah, it was the final film of the Mick Travis trilogy, and in many ways, one of the most underrated. I adore this movie. Give it a chance. It's got body horror in it. It's got everything in it. Malcolm McDowell, he doesn't have as much of a prominent role as he did in If and Oh Lucky Man. But man, Britannia Hospital is still a hidden gem. You have no idea what you're missing with that movie. It's a pretty savage satire against the national health the national health system in England, and also against the royal family and just the class system in general. I mean, it's just brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. But Lindsay Anderson was also known for making other films like This Sporting Life, which is a film recounts the story of a rugby league footballer, Frank Matchin in Wakefield, a mining city in Yorkshire, whose romantic life is not as successful in his sporting life. Story of former professional rugby league footballer also wrote the screenplay, and the film stars Richard Harris, Rachel Roberts, William Hartnell, and Alan Bedell. And it won a bunch of awards. I mean, especially with the BAFTAs and everything. It opened up at the Odeon Leicester Square in London's West End on February 7th, 1963. That was the film that put Lindsay Anderson on the map in the UK. And but he didn't make a lot of other films outside of the Mick Travis trilogy. But he was, you know, he had so much respect within the industry that, I mean, just to have his name, you know, to a prestige picture like this was huge. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the two leads of Chariots of Fire, Ian Charleson and Ben Cross, you know, they were not stars. No, nobody knew who the hell these guys were. I mean, you know, they had done stage work and everything, but these guys, John Gielgud and Lindsay Anderson, along with Ian Holm, who will come in later, those were the guys that put the that made the producers comfortable with their investments when it came to Chariots of Fire. Is that you have these veterans of the British theater, you know, backing up this very special, very specific story that is being made with two complete unknowns, and they play these two British hunters, and here they are practicing in the Highlands of Scotland. Yeah, this movie was shot in both Scotland and England. Gorgeous, gorgeous shots. I mean, this was shot by David Watkin, who later won the Academy Award for shooting out of Africa. But after Britannia Hospital, despite the fact that its cult status has grown considerably in the past 40 years, that you know, I think that film critics are finally coming around on to the fact that, you know, If, A Lucky Man and Britannia Hospital are like, is one of the greatest trilogies in the history of film. At least I think so. But his last film was actually The Whales of August in 1987, which starred Bette Davis and Lillian Gish, of all people, Vincent Price and Ann Southern. I haven't seen that movie in years. I should check it out again. But Lindsay Anderson is still considered a legend in the United Kingdom because of those films that he made with Malcolm McDowell. And if you've never seen him, if you love Malcolm McDowell and any of his other movies, trust me, he considers Oh Lucky Man his you know, the best film that he ever did. And he even told Warner Brothers, when Warner Brothers came to Malcolm McDowell and said, would you do an audio commentary for A Clockwork Orange? And Malcolm McDowell said, yes, I would, as long as I can do one for Oh Lucky Man too. And they agreed. Now, the only thing is that while If and Britannia Hospital are both on Blu-ray, Oh Lucky Man, unfortunately, is only available on a Warner DVD. And if I remember correctly, it's a 3-hour movie, and they slice it up onto 2 discs, which is a little frustrating because I prefer to watch Oh Lucky Man from start to finish. And believe me when I say I will be doing a commentary on Oh Lucky Man next year. But yeah, I had to talk about Lindsay Anderson because he's not on screen for much of this movie. Excuse me. So, why am I doing Chariots of Fire? What is the reason why I'm doing an audio commentary for Chariots of Fire? of all movies. Because here again, while I think that the reputation of this movie is very respectable, it's not nearly as popular as it was in 1981. And in fact, I mean, considering the fact that the most popular movie that year, which was Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's now considered one of the most popular films in history. And Chariots of Fire has now almost become entirely forgotten. Not necessarily because of Raiders, but, just because of the fact, I mean, it's a movie that won a bunch of awards. And while people went to see it, people did go see Chariots of Fire in the theater. I mean, it made, $60 million plus, and then it made like another $60 million in rentals. And I think, and I think I am underestimating that box office performance right there, because, the director, Hugh Hudson, he insists on the bonus features that he still gets checks for this, which I believe him. But so the producer, David Puttnam, I mean, he was basically inspired by the footage that he saw of these two runners, which are, curiously enough, not available on the Blu-ray. I wish that we actually had some actual footage of the runners that was publicly available from the 1924 Olympics. And well, here again, and that's an ideal reason of why not make a movie about this, so we can recreate this this pivotal moment, which, of course, was very important for England after World War One. There's not a lot of movies made about runners, though. I mean, granted, there was like, I remember Jared Leto doing a movie called Prefontaine, and there was also a documentary made about that runner as well. I'm trying to recall like any other movies that have been made about runners, and I honestly can't think of any. And I think that's one of the things that people were drawn to with Chariots of Fire, in that it showcased a sport that doesn't get showcased often enough when it comes to film. And sometimes stories would have runners in them, but a lot of times it wouldn't be centered around the actual runner. And so Chariots of Fire is kind of unique in that regard. And here again, it was produced for Hugh Hudson had come from the world of documentaries and commercials, but he had never directed a feature film before. So, and this was kind of like a first film for so many people, for the producer, for the writer, for the director, for the stars of the movie. Like I said, they were banking on the supporting cast to carry this movie, which is pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. But I decided to do Chariots of Fire because, well, like I said before the commentary started, Alan Ladd Jr., who was this legendary producer behind Star Wars, he gave the green light to Star Wars even before American Graffiti ever came out, and actually gave George Lucas credit in saying that he didn't necessarily believe in the concept. He didn't necessarily believe in the Star Wars concept or the story or the characters, but he recognized talent in George. He knew that George had so much talent and creativity and enthusiasm, and knowing that American Graffiti was probably going to be a hit, he basically wrote up a simple contract with him saying, all right, well, 20th Century Fox will help out with the production of Star Wars, and he got like $11 million. Probably should have gotten a little bit more than that. But after the release of Empire Strikes Back, there was a lot of, shall we say, a lot of anger and resentment among the 20th Century Fox staff when Empire Strikes Back didn't make them the kind of money that they wanted, because Lucas basically got all the extra money that was set aside for for promotion and toys and everything. So 20th Century Fox wasn't very happy about the percentage cuts for the studio. And so there was a lot of hatred and bickering, and it resulted in George Lucas withdrawing from the guilds, the Directors Guild, the Writers Guild, and everything. So and Alan Ladd Jr. Left 20th Century Fox in 1979. By the way, 20th Century Fox is relevant here because initially this was supposed to be Chariots of Fire was supposed to be released as a 20th Century Fox production. What happened was that David Puttnam, the producer, and he actually told this story on the Blu-ray, is that he just happened to run into the president of 20th Century Fox one day, and he showed him what he was working on in terms of Chariots of Fire. The president of 20th Century Fox reportedly loved it. And, and they set up a contract to make the movie. However, when the film was completed, they decided not to release it. Whatever the reason for that, I don't necessarily know. But it's kind of funny that Alan Ladd Jr. was, of course, at 20th Century Fox, and then he went and formed his own company, which is the Ladd Company, to where this would be the very first one to be released. Basically, Warner Brothers were the distributors. However, there was still a team at the studio that believed in this movie, that they believed in Hugh Hudson and Chariots of Fire, and they believed in the story, and they believed that this had a lot of potential as a movie. So it wasn't just the Ladd Company. I mean, whether they convinced Warner Brothers that this was a perfect fit, but Ladd Company, of course, started out. All their films were going to be distributed through Warner Brothers, and in other films that we'll talk about in later commentaries for Ladd releases, we'll talk about how that relationship was kind of broken down over time between the Ladd Company and Warner Brothers ever since Chariots of Fire came out. But at the same time, I mean, these two forces, they basically joined together to produce this movie, which was a huge gamble in 1981. Massive gamble. I mean, I can see executives at other studios being like, wait a minute, why would people want to see two runners at the Olympic Games in Paris? 100 years ago or whatever. I mean, I can see them being a little cynical about that in that regard. And I'm still a little shocked that even with Vangelis' score put into the movie, that they didn't recognize that, hey, this is a tribute to the beauty of running, to what these men do and why they run, why they run. Their reasons for running. Now, one of them, of course, the Christian is running for God, obviously, and we'll talk about that also. And of course, Ben Cross, who plays the Jew here, and who experiences anti-Semitism when he attends the college. Of course, very sad but true. He is. Sorry, I just. So, I mean, these two men are running for something that they absolutely believe in, bottom line. And you may not share with them the beliefs that they have, but the bottom line is that you still end up rooting for them because of the fact that they are so earnest to run for what they believe in. And I'm speaking as somebody who is not a religious man at all. I'm not really a sports guy at all. See, that's the thing, is that this was going to be a challenge to me no matter what. Because, look, I first saw Chariots of Fire in high school. And I remember liking it immensely. And I do remember liking Chariots of Fire enough to where I probably would want to have seen it again. And this was, of course, the same time I had rented Reds, and I had rented so many other films through the library. I mean, The Godfather. I rented everything through the library. And I remember when I got this, it was around the same time I got Reds, which is the Warren Beatty movie, which came out the same year. And I remember thinking, you know what? I thought Chariots of Fire, worked as a 2-hour movie. I thought it told its story very, very well over those 2 hours. I thought it was inspirational. And even though I didn't share the beliefs of these two guys, I understood why they were running and what they were running for. And I still found that very inspiring and very powerful. So the movie did affect me. And, one of the great champions of Chariots of Fire was, of course, Roger Ebert. And, of course, that's kind of a big deal because apparently at the Cannes Film Festival, when Chariots of Fire came out there, there were some that were not fans of the movie, and that was the French. Because they didn't appreciate being called frogs and all this there was just a little bit of negativity and criticism of the French in this movie, okay, and they didn't like it, and they weren't going to vote for it in the awards, apparently, or at least apparently that was the indication. So Roger Ebert, who of course loved Chariots of Fire, he basically was able to get a award for Chariots of Fire called the American Critics Award, which has never been given out since then, and it was never given out ever before. So in a 6-5 vote, Chariots of Fire got the American Critics Award, which, of course, the great irony of that is because this is a British production. I mean, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. Part of the reason why it won Best Picture was, of course, that endorsement with the American Critics Award, and and the French don't like it, but at its heart, it's a British film. It's a British film. It's about British athletes and the British establishment. I mean, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that whole relationship there. But see, in a crazy way, it all works. I mean, it works beautifully as just an inspirational story about two guys who wanted to run. I think on that level alone, I think it deserves applause and recognition, and that's why I'm perfectly fine with its Best Picture win. Give me just 1 minute here. Run, Lola, run. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Run, Lola, run is a fucking masterpiece. And dare I say it, I would watch it over Chariots of Fire. But look, we're talking about the sport of running here. Run Lola Run. That is that's a good movie. That's a really good movie. I love it. I love Frank the Potent in it. But that's not a movie about the sport of running. But we just missed Ian Holm here. There he is with the cigar and the hat. Hugh Hudson declared him as the greatest British actor living and working at that time. I'm not gonna argue with him. Ian Holm is great in everything he's done, as is Sir John Gielgud, who we saw earlier. And like I said, they don't have these major roles in the movie. They just kind of pop up whenever the story could use some marquee value, and they give the movie that marquee value that the scenes actually play very, very well, because it's just a pleasure watching these guys work and support a passion project that they believe in, that they recognize why it's important, and they recognize why these kind of films demand to be made, and everything. But the next thing I wanted to talk about was, of course, the lead up to the Academy Awards. Because, I mean, I already mentioned the Cannes controversy with the American Critics Award. Here again, I still can't wrap my head around that. I really can't. But I mean, but we need to do an even deeper dive here, because Chariots of Fire was an extreme long shot. It was an extreme long shot, to say the least, to actually win, to actually literally win the gold. I need to bring this up because this is, I mean, without this guy's research, I think I would be totally lost on this. But where is... I mean, there's a guy that does a blog. He's done this blog for like 20 years, called the Nighthawk, called the Nighthawk blog, and he's like obsessed with the Academy Awards to the point where he actually looks at all the adaptations that were up for nominations and everything by reading the books and then comparing notes that way. That's how much he does. But here's the story, I mean, in just a few paragraphs, of what the Oscar race was like in 1981, to give everybody an idea on how the hell Chariots of Fire actually got through the finish line. Well, Louis Malle's Atlantic City had won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival in September of 1980. Paramount finally opened it in the States of April of 1981, and the critics couldn't stop gushing about the film or its star, Burt Lancaster. But the public couldn't be convinced, and it never managed to make much money. Understandable. I've seen Atlantic City. It was a good film. I don't need to see it again. I'll just say that. It's a good film. I don't need to see it again. But Paramount didn't care. After all, they had the combination of the two men that had made the biggest films of all time, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. Lucas's story about an adventurer named Indiana Jones first suggested to Spielberg when the men were on vacation in Hawaii together after the opening of Star Wars became yet another Spielberg smash, and the two now had combined for the four biggest films of all time as Raiders of the Lost Ark quickly climbed the box office charts. And of course, that Spielberg smash was, of course, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Almost disappearing under the weight of Raiders' reviews and grosses were Arthur, a comedy that harkened back to the 30s with Dudley Moore, and The French Lieutenant's Woman, the film adaptation of the John Fowles magnificent novel that had defied directors for over a decade. Both had good reviews, with bulk of them going for John Gielgud as Arthur's butler and Meryl Streep as the woman. And of course, John Gielgud is, of course, also in Chariots of Fire. In the meantime, after the triumphant appearance at Cannes and opening night of the New York Film Festival, producer David Puttnam's new film, Chariots of Fire, was opening to strong reviews and strong box office. The normal onslaught of serious fall films brought forth Milos Forman's adaptation of E.L. Doctorow's Ragtime, the uniting on-screen of Henry Fonda and his daughter Jane in On Golden Pond, and Warren Beatty's three-hour epic of the Russian Revolution, Reds. Reds would quickly receive a massive amount of awards attention, winning Best Director from the LA Film Critics, Best Picture from the New York Film Critics, and Director and tie for Picture at the National Board of Review. Chariots of Fire would take home the other half of the NBR award, while Atlantic City would take home Best Picture from the LA Film Critics. The final major group, the National Society of Film Critics, were clearly on the Atlantic City side of any argument, picking the film up for picture, director, screenplay, and actor, the first film to ever take home all four awards from the group. The Golden Globes would simply confuse things. Chariots of Fire and Atlantic City were both considered foreign films, and were ineligible for Best Picture. They would not change the rules for foreign films in English until the mid-1980s. And by the way, just real quick, they are watching The Mikado here. But Atlantic City would be up for director. Raiders was nominated for director, but nothing else. I can't make head or tail out of that. Instead, the big films were On Golden Pond, Reds, French Lieutenant's Woman, Ragtime, and Sidney Lumet's Prince of the City. All 5 were nominated for Best Picture Drama, and only French Lieutenant's Woman was out of the director race. Warren Beatty would continue his awards accolades by winning director, but On Golden Pond would take home picture and screenplay. At the Writers Guild Awards, both Reds and On Golden Pond would take home awards, being in different categories, while Atlantic City, Prince of the City, Ragtime, and Raiders would all earn nominations. But the Directors Guild welcomed Chariots of Fire into its final 5, along with Reds, Atlantic City, On Golden Pond, and Raiders, with Beatty taking home yet another award. The results. Reds was up for 12 awards, including all 4 acting awards. This is the Oscars here. Beatty himself was up for 4 awards for the second time. The only other person to do it was Orson Welles. The other 4 films were its competitors for the DGA, and for the first time since 1964, all the Best Picture nominees were nominated for Best Director, so there was no film that could be immediately written off. On Golden Pond was up for 10 awards, and the only film up for adapted screenplay, so it figured to win at least 1. Atlantic City was only up for 5, but like Reds and Pond was up for Big 5 picture, director, screenplay, actor, and actress. Chariots of Fire looked far back into the pack, but at least had a screenplay nomination, which was not among the 8 nominations for Raiders. So going into the Academy Awards ceremony, Chariots of Fire was, in every single way, the underdog. It was literally the dark horse to all these other films that I mentioned numerous times. Look, I am not a fan of On Golden Pond. Yes, there's some good acting in it. I'm not a fan of it. Same thing with Atlantic City. I've seen it a couple of times. I don't need to see it again. Chariots of Fire, and it's same thing with Reds. And I have nothing but respect for Warren Beatty as an actor and director. Reds is not one of my favorite films that he made, even though I understand why people like that movie because it's about the Russian Revolution. I just can't sit through it for another 3 hours. That's just me, though. I got other Warren Beatty movies I can watch. But anyway. So the point is that Chariots of Fire was the underdog going into this race. Now, real quick, I need to mention that this lady that Ben Cross is courting on screen here, this is the actor Alice Krige. And she's best known to audiences, I think, as playing the Borg Queen in the 1996 film Star Trek First Contact, where she seduces Lieutenant Commander Data, and then Picard has to come to the rescue and everything. I mean, she's done lots of other stuff, but I think to most audiences that's what she's known for the most. But just to double check real quick on her resume, because she's actually a really good actress, and she's actually done a lot more than just Star Trek. But in this scene right here, it should be noted that Ben Cross gives a very funny story on the documentary bonus features where Hugh Hudson wanted a little bit more sexual electricity in this scene. So he whispered into Alice Krige's ear to basically take her foot and put it in Ben Cross's crotch and rub her foot on his penis as they're doing this scene together. So just imagine being Ben Cross and acting in front of this gorgeous, talented woman, and she's rubbing your crotch with her foot. She's wearing stockings and everything. And look, Hugh Hudson wanted sexual electricity in this scene, and boy, he got it. It's like, so the Ben Cross's reactions are all absolutely genuine. But this is a wonderful scene. It really is. But Alice Krige, she was in the 1980 television version of A Tale of Two Cities, and I believe that had Timothy Dalton, if I'm not mistaken. No, it was Chris Sarandon and Peter Cushing. My bad. I was thinking of another adaptation, I think Wuthering Heights or something. But this was essentially, her first film was Vergeet My Knee in 1976, directed by Elmo DeWitt. So this was her second movie, Chariots of Fire. And since then, she was also in the same year as this, she was also in Ghost Story. I'm sure some of you remember that little horror film with Fred Astaire, of all people. He was also in King David in 1985, which had Richard Gere. Oh, I'm sorry, she was also in that. She was also in Barfly with Mickey Rourke, Sleepwalkers. And then finally, Star Trek First Contact is the Borg Queen. Let's see. Yeah, she's done a lot of sci-fi shows, actually. I thought she's been in more movies, though. That's interesting. Well, she's done a lot of episodes of The Syndicate, and shows like Tyrant and Carnival Row. Yeah, she does a lot of television work. And you know what? She was actually in the 2022 version of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She played Mrs. MC in that, and she's actually shooting a movie right now called Shingetsu. But most people know her from Star Trek First Contact. I will always never forget her as the Borg Queen in that. But anyway, going back to the Oscars ceremony, all the momentum looked like it was going towards Reds, especially when Maureen Stapleton won Best Supporting Actress for the first award of the night. But by the time the show got to the major awards, it was Raiders that had won 4 Oscars plus 1 special Oscar for a total of 5. While Reds and Chariots had 2 each, and Pond didn't have any. But then Beatty took home Best Director, and it looked like Reds might be the big film of the night. But it had lost the next award, Original Screenplay, to Chariots of Fire. And then On Golden Pond took home 3 in a row with Adapted Screenplay, and then wins over Reds in Actor and Actress. So going into the final award, it was 3 wins for Reds, Pond, and Chariots. Raiders had already won 5. But yeah, Reds, On Golden Pond, and Chariots of Fire all had 3 Oscars. And in the end, it was Chariots of Fire that took Best Picture, and stunning Hollywood pundits everywhere. So it really, and look, I mean, he doesn't give, he thinks that Raiders of the Lost Ark was the better film that year. And look, I think it's almost ridiculous to actually compare the 2 films, because aside from being period pieces, there's not really much of a difference, any kind of similarity between them. But the thing is that, let's say I was an Oscar voter in 1981. Let's just say, for shits and giggles, that I was an Oscar voter in 1981. I would have voted for Raiders of the Lost Ark, just because of the fact that I do think that of all the films that came out in 1981, I do think that is absolutely, without a doubt, the best film. It is a masterpiece. I will see it 1,000 times later in my life. I mean, I remember answering a tweet one day, and I said, look, I mean, out of all these films, look, it doesn't matter. Raiders all day, all night, every night for the rest of my life. That movie is just, it's so iconic and epic. and rewatchable 1,000 times over, that I just can't imagine any other movie getting close to that. Now, but you have to look at it in perspective of being there in 1981, when all we had was Raiders. We didn't have its legacy yet, but yeah, it was a box office hit. You know, the critics liked it, the audience loved it. And of course, Spielberg was still desperately trying to get that respect as a director in terms of the Hollywood elite. And Raiders didn't quite get there. And even E.T. didn't get there, even though that had won Oscars as well. All I'm saying is that if I were an Oscar voter, I would have voted for Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I still would have been more than happy that the Chariots of Fire won. Because here again, it was the complete underdog going into the Oscar race. I mean, like I said, for some reason, 20th Century Fox had dropped it. There was a notorious screening where one studio executive said he had to go to the bathroom and he never came back. I mean, it just seemed like that there was some kind of, and you know, it got so bad. It got so bad at one point that Hugh Hudson thought that the only chance of this ever getting any kind of release was as a made-for-TV sports thing. And one producer offered to do it as a made-for-TV, like one-night sport movie event, and he passed on it. So Chariots of Fire was so damn lucky. What happened is that ultimately, okay, Warner Brothers and the Ladd Company, they liked the project. They were championing the project. They took it over from 20th Century Fox after they had passed on distributing it. And what happened is that even though there was some instances where there were a couple of test screens that didn't go well, critics didn't like it and they said they weren't going to write any positive words about it. No, this is all stories that they said they're not making up, that all this is true. But this movie was in danger of being, shot down at every juncture point. You know, it had such a long road in getting to the Best Picture winner. But at any rate, it was actually a critic from the LA Times who went to a screening of Chariots of Fire, and the director Hugh Hudson was there. The Warner Brothers executives were there. The Ladd Company executives were there. They all watched the film, and when the movie was over, it was the critic from the Los Angeles Times that got up and gave it a standing ovation, or rather initiated a standing ovation. And slowly but surely, all the other people in the room got up and applauded the movie. And it was at that point that Warner Brothers gained confidence in it. It was at that point that they actually started to realize, okay, this movie does have a serious shot at success, even if it only has like a few familiar British faces and some serious talent. I mean, Ian Holm is a great actor, and he is known well enough by enough audiences at the time to where people would be like, oh, I recognize him. He's a good actor, But no, they were selling this movie with zero movie stars and previous executives and people had walked out on it. They had no confidence in this project at all. And the funny thing is that the Vangelis score may have saved the movie, because the funny thing is that opening, the music, that famous electronic piece that opens up the movie and closes the movie, that was a very last minute decision, because originally they were going to use another piece of music. Hugh Hudson basically went to Vangelis and said, look, I want to use this specific piece, which is called, just 1 second here, Jerusalem. He wanted to use that piece originally for the opening sequence and the ending sequence, and said, also your score can fill out the rest of the picture from there. And while Vangelis understood why Hugh Hudson liked that particular piece of music and why he wanted to use it for the opening, he said, Vangelis said, you know what, I can do something better. I assure you I can do something better. And that's what came about to the very famous scene. Oh, by the way, this Blu-ray book by Warner Brothers, they give you a bonus CD of the score. I haven't popped it into my player yet, and to be perfectly honest, I mean, I live in New York. I don't even have a CD player in a car anymore. But rest assured, if I still had a car, I would be playing the CD in my CD player there. But this is a beautiful Blu-ray book here. But yeah, it was a very last-minute decision to include that opening piece. And so there's been a lot of speculation since then. Was it merely because of that opening sequence and that music that garnered the movie Best Picture? Maybe. But see, and that's the thing. Going back real quick, very briefly to the Nighthawk write-up here, he considers Reds and Raiders of the Lost Ark to be both masterpieces. That's awesome. Absolutely. Atlantic City, he also considers that a 4-star masterpiece. All 3 of those movies he gave 4 stars to. On Golden Pond, he only gave 3. And I kind of agree with him. I mean, aside from some good actors and some good performances, I mean, that's not a movie I will be watching over and over again. And then finally, Chariots of Fire, which he only gave 3 stars to. And I like what he said here. I mean, just a quote. To be fair, the Vangelis score is a truly phenomenal piece of music. It stirs the soul, and makes you think of that opening scene. The same scene also closes the film, bookmarking it around the funeral that is actually the opening and ending of the film, but people often forget that. That I do not give it my Nighthawk award is because it is from the same year as the score for Raiders, which I hold up as the greatest film score of all time. This certainly is the greatest second-place finisher in the history of the Nighthawk Awards. But what about the rest of the film? It's really not that much worth remembering. Oh, certainly it is good enough. It tells a fairly compelling story of 2 young men, one Jewish and one the son of Scottish missionaries. They both run for their glory and more than that. For Ben Cross, the best of the young performers, it is settling the score against all those stuffed shirts who would look down on him for being a Jew. There's a great scene where he stands up to the heads of the college to hold a mirror to their own arrogance and prejudice. And for Ian Charleson as the Scot, he finds his path in his simple phrase, I believe God made me for a purpose, but he also made me fast. So they both succeed against the odds. They both manage to beat more highly hyped American runners and win Olympic gold at the 1924 Paris Olympics. And while many would find that the compelling part of the story, for me, it loses interest. They go against the odds and they win. How many films have that story? What was so refreshing about Rocky is that he didn't win. That's fair. That is absolutely fair. I don't disagree with that. The film is solidly acted, though Ben Cross is far better than the other young actors. It is really the elder British actors, most notably Ian Holm, who lead the way. The music is very stirring and is well put together, but it is not particularly well directed. Hudson is one of the worst directors to ever receive an Oscar nomination, though this wouldn't be apparent until later, and that opening scene is rather clumsily filmed. I still think that without the music that this film would have simply faded away into obscurity. Well, I got to be a little bit more praiseworthy. I got to give a little bit more praise to the movie than that. Here again, I would have voted for Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I do think that Chariots of Fire is a very worthy Best Picture winner. I absolutely feel that. I felt that way when I saw it in high school, and I feel that way seeing it now. And like I said, I think there's more than enough talent and experience on display, as well as just being visually beautiful. I mean, the running scenes in this movie are exhilarating. They are absolutely evocative and exhilarating. And, I could listen to the music all day, I mean, to be perfectly honest. But we should talk about we should now talk about Hugh Hudson, because Hugh Hudson didn't make a lot of movies after Chariots of Fire. And after Chariots of Fire, he had actually before Chariots of Fire, he actually worked as second unit on Midnight Express with Brad Davis, who will appear later in this film with Dennis Cristopher as the American athletes that they're running up against at the Olympic Games. Hugh Hudson, he had worked in documentaries, he had worked in commercials, and then he was given his big break on Midnight Express, where he basically did second unit work on that. And he also what I also found interesting is that also while he was making documentaries and commercials, he was also working with a company that Ridley Scott founded. And that's very interesting because the Ladd Company, of course, would later release Blade Runner, the Ridley Scott sci-fi epic, which of course we'll be doing a commentary on next Saturday night. But Hugh Hudson only did a few other movies after Chariots of Fire. Bear in mind that while he was nominated for Best Director, he didn't win. He lost to Warren Beatty for Reds, which I actually personally agree with myself, although of course, you have to make an argument for Spielberg for Raiders of the Lost Ark. I understand why Warren Beatty won for Reds. I totally get it. I'm cool with it. Bottom line. But anyway, Hugh Hudson, after Chariots of Fire, his next film would, of course, be the 1984 adaptation of Tarzan, which was called Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes. And this film had Christopher Lambert as Tarzan, although the name is never used in the dialogue, that's true. And then in the role of Jane was the film debut of Andie MacDowell, although infamously her voice was dubbed over by Glenn Close. Of all people. And let's put it this way. It did receive Oscar nominations. It got Oscar nominations for Ralph Richardson in his final role for supporting actor, Best Writing Screenplay based on a material from another medium, and Best Makeup. And it was because the first Tarzan feature film to be nominated for the Academy Award. The later Disney animated feature film became the first one to win an Oscar. Okay. I remember watching Greystoke growing up when my parents had it recorded on VHS. I never liked it. I have to be 100% honest here. I thought the ape scenes, the makeup and the ape scenes were extraordinary. And it's one of those movies that the consistent opinion seems to be that when the movie is in the jungle, it's excellent. When it's back in England, it's a bore. I have read numerous sources that Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes, that it is the finest adaptation of the book, and certainly the most faithful adaptation of the book. However, it's also a notorious film because apparently Robert Towne had worked on it before he left to do personal best for Warner Brothers, and he never really got back around to finish it. And he took his name off the movie and denounced what Hugh Hudson did with the version of Greystoke that we now have today. But I have to confess, I am not a fan of Greystoke at all. Now, what's funny is that when he's interviewed for the Warner Brothers disc, because he did one more movie after Greystoke, which ended up essentially ending his career as a feature film director. I mean, like I said, Chariots of Fire was his film debut. He got all this praise for the movie. And then he made Greystoke. He got some praise. And then finally, in 1985, he made a movie called Revolution, starring Al Pacino, which is actually set in 1776. And essentially, Al Pacino plays a fur trapper, and he gets embroiled in the American Revolution with his son. Revolution is one of the biggest bombs of the 1980s. It ruined the production company that Hugh Hudson and the producer were a part of. And let's just say that it was the term Oscar bait that could apply to Revolution, because the whole purpose of Revolution, when it was conceived to be made, was simply to win Oscars. Apparently, after Chariots of Fire, they were so gung-ho, and they actually seriously thought they could pull this off. Hugh Hudson, being a British director, actually helmed Revolution. I don't think his direction is very good in that movie at all. However, I don't think the movie is as bad as its reputation, because it essentially was kind of laughed off the screen. It didn't. I think it was. I think they spent like $30 million on it, and it didn't even make like 30,000. That's how much of a bomb it was. And when you have Al Pacino in your lead, I mean, come on, seriously. I mean, Revolution is. It's a film that I definitely intend to revisit someday. Just because I do think that it isn't as bad as its reputation. There's not a lot of movies set during the American Revolution, and I certainly think Revolution is a lot better than The Patriot with Mel Gibson. I think it's a hell of a lot better than that. But aside from that, Hugh Hudson never really made another film after that. I mean, aside from I Dreamed of Africa with Kim Basinger, which was a bomb critically and commercially, that was basically it for Hugh Hudson as a director. So I can understand why somebody would try to label him as one of the worst directors to ever be nominated for an Academy Award. I don't think that Chariots of Fire is badly directed, though. That's the thing. I do think that this film has decent direction. And of course, one thing that he does mention in the bonus material, Hugh Hudson, the director, is that Lindsay Anderson became kind of a mentor for him. And come on, when you have Lindsay Anderson as your mentor in directing a movie, you could do much, much, much worse. Okay, and that's what I'm saying. I think Hugh Hudson was very, very, very lucky to have had the right story, to have gotten the right actors, and to have gotten just the right key personnel to make this project work, and to bring in the audiences that it did. Because here again, I do think that this movie is a strong movie. It's a shame that it doesn't really get talked about anymore. It's a shame that it doesn't really be watched anymore. I'm sure it still plays on television from time to time, but it's not exactly a movie that people are clamoring to see. And that's the thing, is that I think this Blu-ray book from Warner Brothers is a testament to physical media and why it's important that we need physical media. If you like this movie at all, pick up this Blu-ray. Seriously, just pick up the Blu-ray, because I love this book personally, because it's basically a 2-disc set. I mean, you get the CD with the music in there, and you get the Blu-ray, which I'm playing right now, obviously. Oh, and the title of the movie, it's interesting, because the original script, I mean, the working title was basically Runners. And then the writer actually saw like an Olympic documentary on TV one day, and they actually quoted this poem from Robert Blake, and that's where he got the title from. Bring me my bow of burning gold. Bring me my arrows of desire. Bring me my spear, O clouds unfold. Bring me my chariot of fire. And that's William Blake, preface to Milton, a poem. The British are coming. Yes, indeed, the British are coming. Well, actually, right now, yeah, the British are definitely coming. The idea for Chariots of Fire began with David Puttnam, the producer of nearly 20 films, including Midnight Express and Bugsy Malone. Puttnam found his next project in 1978 while browsing through the only book in his newly rented Los Angeles home, The Official History of the Olympic Games. Intrigued by the stories of Eric Liddell and Harold Abrahams, Puttnam commissioned Colin Weiland to write an original screenplay based on the two British athletes to beat the odds at the 1924 Summer Olympics. Placing ads in London newspapers, Weiland solicited first-hand accounts of the games. Yeah, when this movie was made, Abrahams had just passed away 2 weeks before. Essentially, they had started pre-production. He passed away only 2 weeks before. But they still managed to interview every living person from that time so that they could provide their first-hand accounts. And it also should be stated, which is actually, this is a very sad thing, but Eric Liddell, of course, it should be mentioned real quick that he was a Scottish sprinter, rugby player, Christian missionary, and he was born in China to Scottish missionary parents, and he attended boarding school near London, spending time, when possible, with his family in Edinburgh, and afterwards attended the University of Edinburgh. Now, the one thing about Chariots of Fire I need to complain about, this is the one thing I wish the filmmakers had done, is provided some kind of postscript saying what ultimately happened to Eric Liddell and Abrams. Because we see that one shot at the very beginning of the film in the 70s, where of course they're reminiscing about running in the 1920 Olympic Games. Here's the thing about Eric Liddell. Very, very tragic end. He returned to China to do Christian missionary work. This is after he had won at the Olympic Games. Liddell wrote of suffering a nervous breakdown due to overwork. He had an inoperable brain tumor. Overwork and main nourishment may have hastened his death. Liddell died on February 21st, 1945, 5 months before the liberation of the Japanese prison camp that he was interred in. So, very, very, very sad ending to Eric Liddell's life, who, basically he went back to Japan as to help out as a missionary. He became interned by the Japanese army, and he just died at one of their camps. Very, very sad story. But and Abrams, the other writer, of course, passed away right beforehand, but right before they started shooting. Placing ads in London newspapers, Weiland solicited first-hand accounts of the games, using Aubrey Montague's letters to his mother as the film's narrative bridge. Puttnam, in the meantime, began raising the film's $6 million budget. Hampered by concerns that American audiences would have little interest in what is essentially a British story, obviously, Puttnam worked for 2 years to secure his financing. Signed to direct Chariots of Fire was Hugh Hudson, an award-winning maker of documentaries and commercials in what would be his feature film debut. Shot over a 10-week period, Chariots of Fire was filmed on locations throughout Scotland and England, including the National Railway Station, St. Andrew's Golf Course, that's the opening shot, Eton College, the Savoy Theatre, and Liverpool Town Hall. Yeah, one of the writer actually said that he wanted to shoot at colleges that he was familiar with, but because of the fact that they wanted to, there's still a lot of anti-Semitism in the British boarding schools, unfortunately. So there was a lot of boarding schools that refused to film it. refused to have the locations to be shot there and everything. Released in North America through the Ladd Company and Warner Brothers in September of 1981, Chariots of Fire opened at the Guild Theater in New York, where it broke house records. But it wasn't until the following March, when it won the Academy Award for Best Picture, Chariots of Fire really took off, becoming one of the most successful independent productions of all time. An inspirational tale of sacrifice and commitment, both on and off screen, Chariots of Fire remains the greatest sports film in history. I would make an argument that this is not really a sports film. Yes, it is about the Olympic Games, and yes, it is about two runners who compete in those games. But I would argue, and even Hugh Hudson, I think, would absolutely agree, it goes beyond the running and the games and all that. This is a universal story. This is something that I think, regardless of one's faith, regardless of one's political persuasions, that you could look at this as a very, very inspirational story of two men who wanted to run and why they wanted to run. Vangelis, the music composer, Vangelis, his father was a runner, so he wanted to make the music in dedication to his father, while at the same time to these two very specific runners. David Puttnam's father was a runner as well. And in fact, let me just go to... I noticed this the other day when I was doing my research. This was a great comment that I read on the... You can view the opening separately on YouTube if you want, but there's this great comment that I found. This was one of the most beautiful opening scenes in film history. The combination of cinematography and score is incredible. It stirs up deep emotions in many who watch it. We are old now, but we were once young, spirited, and driven. Coincidentally, the day this particular take was filmed, it was a reshoot day. The earlier effort a few weeks earlier had to be trashed when they discovered during post-recording production that grains of sand had gotten on the lens. Now, this is something they didn't put in here or mention on any of the bonus features. By taking it back to the West Sands Beach reshoot, they happened to pick a day where the white caps of the tide happened to be quite prominent. This made the resulting scene even more aesthetically remarkable. Director Hugh Hudson originally wanted to use the Greek composer's tune L'Enfant for the beach scene and filled it with the 1977 piece blasting from speakers so that the runners could pace themselves to its rhythms. But Vangelis convinced Hudson he could write a better theme, and then did so. As he later told Chariots producer David Puttnam, "My father is a runner, and this is an anthem to him." And we just saw the American runners that they're going to be challenging. That was Brad Davis and Dennis Cristopher, who, of course, there they are on screen right there. Yes. Brad Davis and Dennis Cristopher. Brad Davis, of course, from Midnight Express. And David Cristopher actually, of course, was in Breaking Away, the 1979 coming-of-age movie, which became a classic in its own right. However, I'm a Dennis Cristopher fan just for Fade to Black, which is the movie he made in 1980, where he plays a guy obsessed with movies and obsessed with, James Cagney in particular, that he starts cosplaying his favorite movie characters and going on a murder spree. It's one of the best slasher movies ever made. It's filled to the brim with a lot of obscure movie references. If you're a Marilyn Monroe fan, you need to buy this movie. If you're a Cagney fan, you need to buy this movie. And if you're a slasher fan, you need to buy this movie. It is that wonderful. Written and directed by Vernon Zimmerman. This Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray is awesome, by the way. But I had to mention that. But Dennis Cristopher, as you can see in this montage, is actually upside down on his head, doing the bike movement on his head, which of course is great because he obviously got training because of breaking away for that. But essentially, Dennis Cristopher and Brad Davis have glorified cameos in this movie. I mean, like he says in the bonus features, Dennis Cristopher said, you know, David Puttnam called me up one day, said, "Hey, look, I mean, I need a favor. Would you like to come to England and shoot for a couple weeks as the American competitors of the Olympic Games?" And he's like, "Absolutely." And of course, Dennis Cristopher was especially overjoyed because he knew that Sir John Gielgud was going to be in the movie. And also remember that John Gielgud had won the Academy Award for Arthur this same year. So, you know, he had 2 big films under his belt. Yeah, that's how big he was. And so here we are at the 1924 Paris Olympic Games. Now, one thing I forgot to mention when I was talking about Hugh Hudson and the fact that the movie he did after this was Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan. It should be noted that at the 1924 Paris Olympics, I just want to make sure I get this right. But at the 1924 Summer Olympics, which is what we're watching here, that took place in Paris, France, I especially love this. Swimmer Johnny Weissmuller won 3 gold medals in swimming and 1 bronze in water polo. Now, as most movie fans are aware of, Johnny Weissmuller played Tarzan in a bunch of movies in the 1930s and 40s. He is, in essence, the most famous Tarzan on the screen that we've ever seen. I wonder what Hugh Hudson's reaction to that would be. I honestly, if I ever met the man in person, I would ask him, "Hey, did you know that Johnny Weissmuller, swam in the Olympic Games?" Like if only they had just like one shot of Johnny Weissmuller, it would have been a nice little prophetic bit. That would have been great. Just real quick about the 1924 Summer Olympics. I'll provide a little bit more here. Paris was, of course, the first city to host the Olympics twice, because they first did it in 1900. And Paris was selected ahead of Amsterdam, Barcelona, Los Angeles, Prague, and Rome. The selection was made at the 20th IOC session in Lausanne in 1921. The cost of these games was estimated to be 10 million francs, with total receipts of 5.5 million francs. The Olympics resulted in a hefty loss, despite crowds that reached up to 60,000 in number daily. The United States won the most gold and overall medals, having 229 athletes competing compared to France's 401. So there's another irony for you. The United States won the most gold and medals overall, but here in this movie we're focusing on these 2 British runners that won the awards at the same ceremony. So, you know, hey, I mean, it's still interesting, absolutely. Yep, British runners Harold Abrahams and Eric Liddell won the 100-meter and the 400-meter events, respectively. Liddell refused to compete in the 100-meter dash because it was held on a Sunday, and he was an observant Christian. I mean, that is very, very true. Fencer Roger Decret of France won 5 medals, of which 3 were gold. The Olympic motto, Citius Altius Fortius, faster, higher, stronger, was used for the first time at the Olympics. It had been used before by the Union des Sociétés Françaises de Sports Athletiques, a French sporting federation whose founding members include Pierre de Coubertin. De Coubertin took the motto from his friend Henry Dryden, a Dominican priest who had coined during a speech before a Paris youth gathering of 1891. Originally called Semaine de Sport d'Hiver, Week of Winter Sports, and held in association with the 1924 Summer Olympics, the sports competitions held in Chamonix between January 25th and February 5th of 1924 were later designated by the International Olympic Committee as the Olympic Winter Games. The art competitions of the 1924 Summer Olympics were the first time that the Olympic art competitions were contested seriously, with 193 entries in 5 categories. A total of 14 medals were awarded, though none were given in the music category. And among the sports were diving, swimming, water polo, boxing, cycling, equestrian, fencing, football, gymnastics, modern pentathlon, polo, rowing, rugby union, sailing, shooting, tennis, weightlifting, and wrestling. And I was going to finish up talking about this Blu-ray real quick, but just to give... Oh, no! I spilled my drink. That's not good. But anyway, let me just... yeah, that was... it's all right. I was going to do a timestamp real quick here. We are approximately 1 hour and 26 minutes in to Chariots of Fire. 1 hour and 26 minutes in, so we have about 38 minutes left, I should say. We're going to have to clean that up later. But I was going to finish talking up about the Blu-ray here. Just 1 second. Okay, we'll take care of that later. Let's see. So the first thing I should mention is, of course, the audio commentary by director Hugh Hudson. It's a very good commentary. It's a solo commentary. And he does manage to keep talking all throughout, which is which is an issue that a lot of directors' commentaries have. At least I think so. Is that, I mean, Hugh Hudson, he doesn't take a lot of breaks. He doesn't take a lot of breaks throughout the commentary, and he provides more than enough information about the shoots and more than enough technical details as well. So it is an excellent commentary, yeah, like I said, he doesn't make it into a full-fledged congratulatory affair. You know, he actually does have a lot of things to say about the making of the movie, and he's actually a very warm speaker. I mean, his voice kind of reminded me of Sir Anthony Hopkins of all people. But yeah, anyway, so there's a series of featurettes known as Behind the Story. Added all together, it comes up to about 2 hours of bonus material. So you get a lot of extras here. Trust me. Wings on Their Heels: The Making of Chariots of Fire, 27 minutes, featuring interviews with Hugh Hudson and the principal cast, intercut with scenes from the film. There is a reunion, a kind of then and now look at several people involved, including Nigel Havers, Hugh Hudson, David Puttnam, Nicholas Farrell, and David Watkin, all of whom were gathered in an opulent hotel room, recounting their memories of the production. Paris, 1924, Birth of the Modern Games, is a really interesting look at the historical significance of these Olympic Games and how the era of the 1920s and the sitting of the Games in Paris combined to make for a very unique situation. I should have watched that. I didn't get a chance to watch that yet. I watched all the other ones, though I missed it for some reason. But I did watch the interview with David Puttnam, and I did watch the interview with Hugh Hudson, the screen tests and everything here. And there is also a tiny bit where Ben Cross actually talks about the film's iconic opening sequence. Yeah. But otherwise, I mean, this Blu-ray book is just absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, I mean, like I said, for anybody who has even a mild uh, love of Chariots of Fire, you need to pick this up. You absolutely need to pick this up. And like I said, I was a little worried about revisiting the movie, but I was actually very, very surprised. See, there you got little character bits right there. There's David Puttnam, the producer. And he didn't do much after Chariots of Fire. He did Local Hero, The Killing Fields, and The Mission. Oh, yeah. He served 10 years as the chairman of the UK's National Film and Television School, and from 1997 to 2007 as first chancellor of the University of Sunderland. Putnam sits today on the Labour benches in the British Parliament's House of Lords. And yeah, it should be mentioned that a lot of these bonus features were actually produced in 2004. So, I mean, aside from Hugh Hudson, I'm not sure, there's very few others associated with this movie that are still with us. We lost Ben Cross in December of 2020. We lost Ian Charleson in 1990. He actually died at the age of 40 due to HIV and AIDS. He was diagnosed in 1986 of HIV, and he died at the age of 40. First celebrity death in the United Kingdom openly attributed to AIDS, and the announcement helped to promote awareness and acceptance of the disease. So a lot of these bonus material extras were dedicated to Ian Charleson's memory. But I mean, Alice Krige is still with us. Brad Davis is gone. Patrick Magee is gone. Yeah, I mean, the cinematographer for Chariots of Fire was David Watkin. And I think I already mentioned before that he won an Oscar for Out of Africa. But among the other films that he shot were Charge of the Light Brigade, 1968, Catch 22, 1970. He shot The Devils for director Ken Russell in 1971. I did a audio commentary on that last year. That was wonderful. Four Musketeers, 1974. Robin and Marion, 1976. Jesus of Nazareth, 1977. He shot Cuba right before this, and Hanover Street. Yentl, Return to Oz, which of course is one of my personal favorites. There's a great new documentary called Remembering Return to Oz, available at Vimeo. You need to check it out. He shot White Nights, Out of Africa, Moonstruck, Last Rites, Memphis Belle, Hamlet with Mel Gibson, Milk Money, Jane Eyre, Night Falls on Manhattan, which I just bought, by the way, Critical Care, Gloria, and Tea with Mussolini. And he passed away in 2008. But yeah, long career there. Now, and we haven't really talked about Vangelis. I wanted to mention a few more things about him because, like I said, I learned all this practically for the first time in the past week. But as people know, Vangelis is Greece. He was born and raised in Athens. He began his career in the 1960s as a member of the rock bands The Forminks and Aphrodite's Child. The latter's album 666 is now recognized as progressive psychedelic rock classic. Vangelis first settled in Paris, gained initial recognition for his scores to the Frederick Russ of animal documentaries. He also released his first solo albums during this time and performed as a solo artist. In 1975, Vangelis relocated to London, where he built his home recording facility named Nemo Studios and released a series of successful and influential albums for RCA Records, including Heaven and Hell, Albedo 0.39, Spiral, and China. And from 1979 to 1986, Vangelis performed in a duo with Yes vocalist John Anderson, released several albums as John and Vangelis. He also collaborated with Irene Pappas on 2 albums of Greek traditional and religious songs. Vangelis reached his commercial peak in the 1980s and 90s. His score for Chariots of Fire won him the Academy Award for Best Original Score, and the film's main theme, Chariots of Fire titles, went to #1 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 chart, while the score for 1492, Conquest for Paradise, directed by Ridley Scott, but it's actually one of his worst movies, nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Original Score, and the film's soundtrack and main theme topped the European charts, selling millions of copies. His compilation albums, Themes, Portraits, and studio album Voices also sold well at the time, and Vangelis composed the official anthem of the 2002 FIFA World Cup, held in Korea and Japan. In his last 20 years, Vangelis collaborated with NASA and ESA on music projects, Methodia, Rosetta, and Juno to Jupiter, his 23rd and final studio album. Having had a career in music spanning over 50 years, having composed and performed more than 50 albums, Vangelis is considered one of the most important figures in the history of electronic music and modern film music. He was known for using many electronic instruments in a fashion of a one-man quasi-classical orchestra, composing and performing on the first take. And next Saturday night, we'll be doing the commentary for Blade Runner, which will be a 40th anniversary commentary. And we'll talk about more about Vangelis and his music for that when we get to it next week. But just to let everybody know, the other films that he has done are Antarctica, Bitter Moon, Oliver Stone's Alexander, Peter Bogdanovich's Mask, starring Cher and Sam Elliott and Eric Stoltz. And I think that's about it as far as the major ones are concerned. And that's the thing. I mean, 1492 Conquest of Paradise is a really bad movie, but I think his score was one of the few things that was cited by critics as being one of the few good things about the movie. So it's not like the movie sucked because of him. The movie sucked because it tried to humanize Christopher Columbus, and who is, of course, a rather despicable figure in American history. But then again, I mean, I will never be doing an audio commentary for a Christopher Columbus movie, that's for sure. But yeah, that's the Chariots of Fire Blu-ray book set. Like I said, any interest whatsoever, please pick it up because it is so worth the $20. It is absolutely worth the $20. Uncle Beer, welcome to the commentary. Nice to see you. Love the koala bear. Yeah, that's very, very nice there. Anybody out in the chat, please let me know what you think of Chariots of Fire. Any thoughts on the movie? What you think of it? I mean, I don't know if you would agree with me that you'd be running with Raiders of the Lost Ark as well. Yeah, somebody asked me, who are you running for? You know, he's like, oh yeah, I'm running for God. No, I'm running for the Jewish community. No, I'm running for Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know? But here again, I'm glad that Chariots of Fire won. I have enough respect for this movie and love for this movie that I'm so glad it won Best Picture because it was a worthy Best Picture winner. And here again, it was a total underdog, total dark horse going into the race. Mm-hmm. And just to let everybody know, Chariots of Fire, of course, is the very first Lad Company release, and we'll be doing other Lad Company releases as the summer goes on. It's basically going to be a summer project. But the next one that we plan on doing as far as Lad Company releases are concerned is going to be Blade Runner. However, I'm also going to be doing very, very soon Outland, starring Sean Connery, which is a movie set on one of Jupiter's moons, and it's based on the classic High Noon, written and directed by Peter Hyams. And as you can see on this Blu-ray, as with all the other Blu-rays of LAD releases, you see their trademark tree, which is not available on Chariots of Fire. It's just, just LAD Company for this. But yeah, LAD Company release. So with the rest of the LAD Company releases, look for that tree in the beginning, and the music score that plays under it, that's John Williams' score. Yeah, I'll be sure to point that out for Outland and Blade Runner when we watch those. But we will also be watching Looker, which is written and directed by Michael Crichton. Star 80, written and directed by Bob Fosse. The Right Stuff, Philip Kaufman's The Right Stuff. Body Heat, written and directed by Lawrence Kasdan. And finally, I just announced this on Twitter because Henry Winkler and Michael Keaton were trending on the very same day, which was amazing. Well, what's even more amazing is that my favorite comedy of all time is Ron Howard's Night Shift, and you better believe me that this is going to be an incredible commentary. That will be in approximately 6 weeks. I will be doing it probably on Saturday, July 30th, which will also serve as the 40th anniversary of the film's theatrical release. So that's just a preview of what's to come as far as LAD Company releases are concerned. But first, I may do Outland in the next few days. I don't know yet. But we're definitely going to be doing Blade Runner next Saturday night. So be sure to be here for that, 9 p.m. Eastern time for the Blade Runner commentary. And here we have Dennis Cristopher and Brad Davis. Just made their appearance at the Olympic Games here. We are approximately 1 hour and 42 minutes into Chariots of Fire. 1 hour and 42 minutes. So we have approximately 22 minutes left to go. And I'm trying to think of what else left to say, because I kind of drained myself, I think, of everything I wanted to say about this film, even though I'm sure there's much more that needs to be said. But I'm trying to rack my brain, think of what else hasn't been covered yet. Well, like I said, I am dedicating this audio commentary to the music composer Vangelis, who, he sadly passed away just a few weeks ago. He passed away on May 17th. Yeah, just 30 days ago. Yeah, we just lost the music computer Vangelis at the age of 79. Just died approximately 30 days ago. So, yeah, one of the great music composers in history, and like I said, I mean, I'm going to be listening to a lot more of his work over the course of the next few weeks. Not just Blade Runner and Chariots of Fire, but many other things as well. I like Dennis Christopher's outfit right here. I love that. No, actually, I got it confused with the other. I'm so sorry. No, I mean, Dennis Cristopher is coming out here about to run. And so here we are finally at the 1924 Summer Olympic Games in Paris. I mean, the crowd is anxious to see everybody run. And like I said, these running scenes are breathtaking. It's the type of thing that these running scenes with the music laid over them they're just all breathtaking. I mean, they're all breathtakingly done. I agree, Rob Casper. I agree so much with you right there. Definitely would have picked Raiders, but Chariots is awesome nonetheless. Yes, I absolutely agree. And look, I mean, because I'm one of those ones that has gotten so cynical about the Academy Awards because they're not really relevant. But look, I mean, in 1981, like I said, I'm okay with them giving Chariots of Fire Best Picture. I am perfectly fine with it, even though Raiders is obviously the more superior movie, and of course the most more iconic movie, despite the fact that Chariots of Fire is iconic for that opening scene. But I must confess that I also have a very I'm not a fan of the Olympics either. I mean, not necessarily because of the competition aspect, but just because, well, let's put it this way. I thought the best film of 2017 was the biopic I, Tonya, which is about Tonya Harding starring Margot Robbie. And let's just say that movie, it attacks the Olympic Committee in many ways in terms of how they select people and how they want Olympic athletes to be presented. They want them to be like perfect, be married with children and be like, well, not children, but like, have like loving families and everything. And of course, Tonya Harding was not that person. She came from the boondocks in Oregon. And of course, the Olympic Games were freaking out over the fact that she was just not a very like camera friendly competitor. Let's put it that way. But the way they, I think how they treated Tonya Harding after that whole controversy was harsh. And here again, I mean, it's like what Margot Robbie says in the movie. I mean, why can't it just be about the skating? Why can't it be just about the skating? So I'm not a fan of the Olympics. I don't watch the Olympics. I don't, I mean, the weird thing is that I actually do have a special affinity for ice skating movies. And a lot of them do end up at the Olympics eventually. I mean, like Ice Castles, The Cutting Edge. And so you would think that I would be interested in ice skating, at least in the Olympics and the Winter Olympics. Like, no. I'm not somebody that would be willing to. I just didn't grow up with that kind of flag waving, patriotism, and also because I wasn't really an athlete. It just wasn't something I was very interested in. Sure, I joined the military and I got in shape that way, but it wasn't like, Dennis Cristopher really sells it as a runner here. He's great. And there you go. Very audience pleasing scene. Very audience pleasing. But yeah, I mean, the Olympics, I mean, it's just, I don't care about the Olympics. I mean, every time the Olympics comes up, I just like, I don't care. I don't care. I will never watch them. But look, I admittedly like Chariots of Fire enough to where I'm willing to watch this movie again and again and again. And certain other movies, like maybe like The Cutting Edge and everything, where the Olympics are just the climactic. It's what the main characters were driving for the entire time, was to win that damn gold medal. And so, I mean, I didn't. It's funny. I actually remember I met a Russian gymnast called Svetlana Boginskaya. She came to my high school to talk and everything, and I don't know. I don't. I mean, like with Michael Phelps and everything, I just don't understand why people are obsessed with these athletes and the fact that they almost treat them like gods and everything. I don't really get it. I don't really get it. I will say that I remember when I watched Leni Riefenstahl's Olympia. One of the great things about that documentary, which is it's a 4-hour documentary, she made it after Triumph of the Will. She was her focus on Jesse Owens throughout the movie is not only evident, but it's also groundbreaking and daring. And and very loving in many ways. She was fascinated, being an athlete herself. She was absolutely fascinated by Jesse Owens as a runner. And of course, Hitler infamously got so pissed off that Leni Riefenstahl essentially did not showcase him as much as she showcased Jesse Owens. And so, yeah, Hitler was not happy with Leni Riefenstahl about that. So, but like I said, aside from all that, there's not really any other movies or any other things that are Olympic, that are associated with the Olympics that I have any intention of watching. And like I said, Chariots of Fire is the absolute rare exception. It's the absolute rare exception. And it's also a good story about anti-Semitism and acceptance, and all those other themes that we'd like to see in the movies and everything. And hey, I mean, I think that I don't think this is a glorified television movie. I think that this is a beautifully made independent film, and that it deserved a lot of its accolades. A lot of the acting is terrific, and I think it's overall an excellent movie. And even if, like I said, if you've never seen it, check it out. If you like it, buy it. Buy the Blu-ray. Buy the Blu-ray book before they're gone forever. I mean, it's Warner Brothers. Who knows if their stock will ever run low on a title like this. But I mean, I wouldn't take any chances. I mean, look, the movie is absolutely worth the $20 price tag. I mean, considering everything that you get with the movie and everything, and the documentaries and stuff, and the commentary, all good stuff, and all worth jumping into. So we are now at 1 hour and 51 minutes. 1 hour and 51 minutes. We have approximately 13 minutes to go. Like I said, pretty much right after this commentary, I will be going to bed. But tomorrow night at 9 p.m., I will be back here to do this audio commentary for A Day in the Death of Joe Egg. I don't know much about it at this point, other than the fact that it's about a teacher and his wife, and them dealing with their son who has a cerebral palsy. But it was a very big hit in the 1960s when this came out on the stage in England. It was distributed by Columbia Pictures, and stars Alan Bates and Janet Suzman. And it's from a really good director, Peter Medak. So I'm really looking forward to checking this movie out and talking with you about this movie tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Like I said, an obscure film that I think deserves a lot more attention. So that will be tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Will be the 50th anniversary audio commentary for A Day in the Death of Joe Egg. Very much looking forward to it. Very much looking forward to it. Yeah, see, yeah, he's like, yeah, it's the day of the Sabbath. It's Sunday. I am not going to run, but good luck to the rest of you and everything. Yeah. Oh, no, of course he's running. uh, like I said, there's Brad Davis again from Midnight Express. There was, I think there was about 40 minutes trimmed from this movie. I think 40 minutes, I think sounds about right. Because originally, of course, this film was supposed to be distributed by 20th Century Fox. And I guess when they saw the movie, they just didn't like it enough to get behind it and everything. So that's how it ended up being looked at by Warner Brothers and the Ladd Company for distribution. I was going to say the actress who plays the sister here, Ian Charleson's sister, her name is Cheryl Campbell. She's 73 now. She starred opposite Bob Hoskins in the 1978 BBC drama Pennies from Heaven, before going on to win the 1980 BAFTA TV Award for Best Actress for Testament of Youth and Malice Aforethought, and the 1982 Olivier Award for Best Actress in a Revival for A Doll's House, based on the Ibsen play. Her film appearances include Chariots of Fire. She was also put in Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, and finally The Shooting Party in 1985. And in fact, she only did one other movie, and that was a movie that came out only 10 years ago called Tamara Drew, a very small British film that I remember liking and enjoying very much. But she mostly made her mark on British television, including, like I said, Pennies from Heaven, Agatha Christie movies, Inspector Morse episodes, Casebook of Sherlock Holmes, that kind of thing. So, And like I said, that music just sweeps you up. It sweeps you up like those waves in the beginning. It really does. And that's what I'm saying. I mean, is that there is more than enough here to be inspired by. No matter, it doesn't matter if you share the beliefs with the runners or not. It doesn't matter, how you feel about the Olympic Games, Dennis Cristopher. But don't feel too bad, Dennis. I mean, the United States were still the big winners at the 1924 Olympics. Yay. Like I said, when that music swells up, it becomes such a rush of emotion and a rush of satisfaction and joy. It really is. Like I said, this movie got great praise when it came out. Roger Ebert was, of course, a massive champion of it. And I'd like to think that this film is still watched today. I really like to think that, but I don't know. Luckily, I think the music has saved the movie from obscurity. Luckily, I think it has saved the movie from obscurity. And also, look, I mean, as flawed as they are, I would also recommend the other two films that Hugh Hudson made in the 1980s, which, of course, are Greystoke and Revolution. They're very flawed. They're not near as good as Chariots of Fire. I mean, here again, this was like a very, very lucky gig. A very lucky gig that he acquired. And just, everything just seemed to fall into place. The right cast. Of course, the funny thing is, one funny story I forgot to mention about the costumes with this movie, because they were shooting at the exact same time as Warren Beatty's Reds. Well, Reds had gone over schedule and over budget, and all the costumes that they had, because both films are set in roughly the same time period in the 20s, and because Reds went over budget and just they kept the costumes all throughout that time. So Chariots of Fire was struggling to find 1920s era costumes for all the actors to wear. They had to go to outside sources, they had to go internationally. They had to make phone calls internationally because Reds was evidently hogging all the 1920s era costumes at this point, which is pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, Rob Gasper, you summed it up perfectly, my man. Is that definitely would have picked Raiders, but Chariots is awesome nonetheless. It is absolutely an awesome movie. Yeah. All right, timestamp here. We should be winding down. We're at 1 hour 59 minutes. So yeah, 5 minutes to go. We made it. We made it through Chariots of Fire. So at any rate, I hope you all enjoyed my commentary tonight. And like I said, tomorrow night will be Day in the Death of Joe Egg. Never seen it before. Highly recommend you check it out. Is that available on Amazon? Let me double check that real quick. Because I had to get that Blu-ray. I really wanted to get that Blu-ray because of the bonus features. Oh, yeah, that's right. Day in the Death of Joe Egg is not available streaming on Amazon. And it's also not available on YouTube either. There are other stage productions available on YouTube, but not the 1972 adaptation. Okay. So unfortunately, like, oh, and here we are back where we started on the beach with all the caddies as the extras in the as we see the credits swell up with the Vangelis music here. So yeah, I forgot to mention Day in the Death of Joe Egg is not available for streaming anywhere. The only way you can watch it is to get a DVD or a Blu-ray copy. So I don't think I'm going to have a large crowd tomorrow night, and that's perfectly fine. But like I said, I encourage you to come out anyway and listen to the commentary. And if you like what you hear, then I obviously recommend you pick up that Blu-ray, particularly this Indicator Powerhouse Blu-ray, because I do believe that this is going to be out of print soon. It may be, they might only have like 4 or 5 copies left, to be perfectly honest. But go ahead and pick that up. And like I said, next Friday night, we will be doing Alfred Hitchcock's Frenzy. Very much looking forward to that as well. I'm actually in the middle of reading a book about Frenzy that I plan to quote from and talk about as we move along on that commentary. Let's see, did I have? No, I don't have it. I don't have it here with me. But and the only other thing I have to do is I need to watch the Frenzy documentary that's on the Blu-ray. There's Dennis Cristopher's credit. Brad Davis is Jackson Scholes. Now it's funny that Ben Cross, who played Abrahams in this movie, in the lead, he did a commercial for the 1984 Olympics 3 years after this movie came out. He did a commercial for the 1984 games where real life runner from the 1924 games where Brad Davis played that character appeared in an Olympic commercial with him. Which is pretty interesting, yeah. And then fade out. That's the end of that's the end of Chariots of Fire. So, anyway, so well, you all know what's coming up here in the next few weeks and everything. And also, I should mention, just to let the we would like to acknowledge the invaluable help and advice given to the production by Jenny Liddell and Jackson Scholes. Jackson Scholes, like I said, was the American runner that Brad Davis played in this movie. But yeah, great. Love the end credits. Love the music. Like I said, I just wish they had a little addendum, a little thing saying what happened ultimately to Abrahams and Liddell. But I just let you know of all that right here in the commentary. So, sequence of Mikado made possible by the King Royal Company. Film was made with the help and cooperation of Metropolitan Borough of Wirral, National Railway Museum York, and the Belgian Maritime Transit Authority. One of the names that they thanked in there was Timothy Burrill. And when I saw that name, I was thinking, wait a minute, he produced Supergirl, of all movies. Rob, hey, great job, Stone. Really enjoyed this. Thank you so much, dude. Thank you for coming out tonight. I will see you all tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern for A Day in the Death of Joe Egg. So, yeah, great. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you for joining.